This one leadership hack will absolutely transform your life because it did for me. And I want to share it with you because if you're looking to lead at the level that you're capable of, you absolutely need to do this. You must do this. And doing this will transform not only the way that you lead your team, it will help you get results personally, and you will see the ripple effect of transforming this one thing. And this one thing, when you do this, it exponentially shifts every area of your personal and professional life. And it's being the client you want to attract. It's being the person you want to attract. Now, let me share with you a little backstory about how I came to understand this concept and how it transformed my life. So one of my first ever coaches, one of my first ever sales coaches, phenomenal coach, really helpful. And one day I made a commitment. I said, "Oh, listen, I'll pay you by the end of the day." I made it, that was, I was probably like 21, 22 at that point in my life. And I was like, okay, I'll pay you by the end of the day. And I remember that for some reason, the payment didn't happen. I can't remember why the payment didn't happen, but I wasn't being my word. And I just got a message back from my coach at the time saying, "Ben, be the client you want to attract." And I remember seeing that message and getting immensely triggered and frustrated and feeling so sorry for myself and sad. And this person didn't, understand how difficult finding the money was or getting the money into my account at that point was. Or so there's some major thing that was probably going on that it didn't end up fulfilling on my word. I remember seeing that text message thinking, I'm just not being my word here. I'm not being my word, BMW. I love that. BMW, be my word. And just seeing that, be the client you want to attract. And I remember my next coaching session and we talked through this experience of not being my word and not committing to not actually doing the thing I'd committed to. And I think this is so important for so many leaders, like managers, people who in any position of power need to be their word, because there is so many ripple effects, like negative ripple effects and positive ripple effects from closing this gap. Now let's talk about it. Let's go a mile deep into this. And first and foremost is that we can never, ever call someone up on a standard which we don't hold for ourselves. And I remember this, so I was in my 20s, I was periodically late. I would maybe arrive 5 minutes late or dead on time with a minute being late. And sometimes I'd even have my whole staff, in the room waiting for me to show up. And it was embarrassing. It was embarrassing for me. It was probably awkward and frustrated and, pissed off for them. And it was a really, really negative situation, because what actually also happened as the leader, it then nullified my ability to call them up to a standard that I wasn't holding for myself. I was a great leader in so many different other ways in my business, but being on time was something I struggled with immensely. Now, one thing I remember the conversation after being the client I wanted to attract with my coach, and he said, let's close these gaps. Now, I want you to write out all of the current struggles that you're seeing in your clients. And there were clients that were walking into my gym late, and I couldn't really say anything because sometimes I would start a session late. There were people that would not pay on time and give us all sorts of reasons why they couldn't pay on time. There was all these different things and I remember doing the exercise, and I do this with some of my clients as well, is look at all of the things which are the piss off ability factors about the people that you're working with, or the demands that you want for the people that in your team, and what really gets under your skin, what really annoys you, aggravates you, frustrates you. And they'll write them all down. And the first thing we need to do is where are we not being our word with these things? And I can guarantee this will almost be like a mirror. It will be like a mirror to what you're currently not doing. Now, this can be really, really simple things. We might have an unspoken agreement, this is why agreements are so important, a commitment from a client, an expectation that they're going to pay on time. First of all, we may not have even got into an agreement saying, these are the dates that you need to pay on time. That's like an agreement. But if we want people to uphold those agreements, we've got to uphold our agreements. And I can remember times where I didn't pay on time. I've been a poor payer and I couldn't challenge on that. It really did remove my power in being able to hold someone to a standard I just wasn't holding for myself. The second one is like something a bit left field as well. Is like, if we want clients and customers to give us raving reviews of our service and share how great we are at what we do, we've got to do the same thing for people and organizations and businesses that we buy from. And sometimes like this is something that was really, really evident for me. And I remember like even like when you get the NPS score, which is the Net Promoter Score, which is how likely are you to recommend this business to a friend or a relative, and I ask you out of 10, they're asking for feedback. They're asking for that gift of feedback. And I remember I used to like, oh, this is just a waste of time. And that's like, hang on a second. When I put NPS into my business, I was asking that question, like, why is no one filling this out? I'm asking them for feedback to make our service much better. And we just didn't have people filling it out. Why? Because I wasn't doing it. I couldn't hold them to that standard. I couldn't communicate a standard which was the norm for me. So this is why being the client you want to attract is so, so important. The third thing is being on time. It's the first common commitment. It's the first common courtesy. Being on time for someone is a real testament. It's a declaration. Your time is valuable to me. And I didn't see that like that. I used to think that people could wait for me and all this sort of stuff. It was, there was so many negative views that I had about being on time. People, I give people time after the session, so it's okay if we start 5 minutes later. I give them time whenever they want time, and it wasn't the case. Being on time is a courteous act of valuing someone's time, and it's sometimes your first impression with someone. So being 1 minute late, 30 seconds within the minute which were meant to arrive is such, it leaves someone like, I remember like sitting on many a Zoom call or having a meeting and think to myself, is this person even coming? So the state I'm arriving into that conversation in is one of a lack of trust. It's building a frame where trust with every going second is reducing the amount of trust that I have in that person. And although this might be so small and subconscious, but over time, what it does is it removes people's trust that you're going to be your word. And I remember working with a client, one of the clients I worked with a couple of years ago, 10 years ago actually, he started all of his relationships with sorry. Oh, sorry, I'm late, because he would be 15, 20 minutes late. So it was always the starting part of that relationship would always be an apology. Now, people make assumptions because how we do anything is how we do everything. So that I'm late arriving to this meeting, am I going to be late delivering the work? Am I going to be delaying perhaps the project that person was involved in? We make assumptions. So being the client that we want to attract is so important in that frame too. The next one is being honest and straight. I love clients that are honest, straight, and tell me what I call a piss off ability factor, something that is uncomfortable for them. It's a struggle with them. It might be something within our relationship they need to share with me, because feedback is a gift. Radical candor, being caring personally, challenging someone directly. I really value that. However, I can't expect that to be given and shared with me if I'm not willing to go and do it with other people. So here's another frame of being the person that you want to attract, being radically candid with those around you in an agreement that they're going to give you that in return. And I think that's what happens when you start to see a lot of clients that I've worked with, radical candor has been a part of their cultural shift in their organization. So I've coached the leader and I've shared with them Kim Scott's book, which is called Radical Candor. They've loved it so much because there's so much backstabbing, bitching, whining, moaning, indirect conversations about people. There's not direct challenge. They've read Radical Candor and then they really wanted to implement it, but it's got to come from the leader. So this is why it's such an important thing to be the person you want to attract. So if you want to attract people that are direct, that tell you the stuff that you need to know, not hide it from you, fail to disclose it. Like, I used to have this in the gym actually, is that someone would be with me for years. Like, we had like 5, 10, I think we've got 14-year clients in the gym now. And someone would be seemingly having a great time in the gym. And one day they'd just cancel their membership and go. And I was always like, what's going on? Like, what, have we done something? Have we said something? And sometimes they would never give us the reason why. They'd never give us the feedback. They would just literally just disconnect and disappear. And I remember like, well, where was I doing this? Was there a particular subscription or a membership or something that I was involved in where I've just cut myself off and not had the courtesy to say to someone, actually, I'm going for personal reasons. This is nothing to do with this. Or it's like, actually, do you know what? This isn't fitting my needs anymore. This is why. And what I did is I closed that gap on a couple of things. And here's the thing, team. This is about integrity. It's about being your word. It's about being your word to yourself, and it's about being your word to other people. And this is the final one. If you want people to create and keep promises, you've got to do the same. And this is what I believe about business. Business is the building of relationships by making and keeping promises. Now, I find that a lot of business owners, leaders especially, they struggle to hold people to the promises that they've made, the commitments, because they do it on a daily, weekly basis. They promise themselves they're going to go to the gym, and then they don't go. They promise themselves that a piece of work is going to get done, no fail by the end of the day, and they don't do it. And what happens is, that's the standard that we set ourselves. It's really low. It's not being our word. And then we attract people that do the same. And anytime that I've got a client that behaves in a certain way, specifically around making and keeping promises, I check in with myself. I'm like, where is the low standard I've allowed? Where's the floor on this that I need to raise? And there's always one for me. And this is why I love self-development. I love being a coach, because it allows me to, first of all, look inside and fix that part, which I believe is a standard I don't want to uphold for myself. And then so when I'm working with clients and people in my world, I'm calling them to that same standard. And that is ultimately, like, think about when you've invested in a trainer, a coach, a consultant, you've maybe perhaps followed a leader of some description. Often what you've subconsciously desired is to call yourself up to the standards by which they hold for themselves. Like, think about, I've got a running coach, and I can see that he does X amount of miles every single week. I'm like, wow, that's the standard. That's his no fail. That's his floor. So I'm going to bump my running up to that floor, because that's a standard I'm going to hold for myself. And so when we are creating our leadership, we want to think about that floor that we're going to hold for ourselves. So this one hack will transform your leadership, and it's a regular check-in with your integrity. It's a regular check-in. And when I say integrity, and this is something I learned from Hina actually, integrity, when you often hear the word integrity, it's charged with some kind of shame. You haven't led at the level that you're capable of. Who are you to have that standard? There's some level where you haven't upheld your word, and you give yourself a really hard time for not doing that. But what we want to do is, integrity is neutral, and we want to just bring ourselves back and close that gap repeatedly. And sometimes it does actually say, like, listen, I communicated that I was going to do this. I didn't do this. I haven't been my word. This is what I'm going to do to change that. And that sometimes is that it's actually communicating the gap. And that's just as important. Sometimes we have to repair and fix the gaps which we've left in our integrity, because when we do that, people trust us way more. I think that I would trust a leader, and I have trusted, I think of coaches and people I've worked with, people that have communicated where they've fallen short rather than going silent. And this is kind of what most people's default is when it comes to not being the person they want to attract. They just go silent, they'll brush it under the rug, they don't face up to it, but then it leaves an imprint on our subconscious. It's every time we do this, it leaves that one little mark, that little checkpoint on our subconscious, and then we don't trust ourselves. And I said before, business is the making and keeping of promises. but also confidence is the making and keeping of promises, because confidence actually means, the root word of confidence is confidere, which means intense trust. I trust myself. Confidence is an intense trusting of myself and my word. So when I say I'm going to do something, I absolutely do it. Now, this has been a work in progress for me, and I really wanted to share this with you because I know this is going to benefit you in some way. Now, there might be a little exercise you wanted to do after listening to this. And the exercise is, look at your world right now. What are the things that are annoying you, frustrating you about clients, family members, friends, and look at what are the struggles and ask yourself, where am I not doing that? Is it that friends who haven't reached out to you in, a month, 2 months, 3 months? Is it that family members have not remembered a certain birthday or communicated with you? Is it that a staff member or work colleague is talking about you to other people? What is going on, and where can you close that gap personally? Be the client, be the person you want to attract.